fetching multiple records and this can be done for one property at a time and multiple properties also at a time. We can fetch multiple records. Okay, so first of all we'll say fetch multiple records for in each property. Okay, so first of all we'll see scenario. So how to fetch multiple records for single property. Okay, so first of all, in order to do this, so already we have data table in the under the data model. Okay, already table is there. I will use the same data table, and so already we have properties inside work class. Okay, we are going to create a section rule, and inside the section, so we need to configure property names. Okay, property names, and if you want to fetch multiple records, okay, if you are using a normal text input is not possible. Either we have to take a drop down option, auto complete option. Okay, we have to use either we have to take drop down or auto complete option. So what are the property you are using? So for that property we have to use drop down control or auto complete control. Okay, so first of all we will configure section, and here in 7 version. Okay, so if I compare with the previous version, the scenario will be totally different. Means if you want to work out the same thing in 6.3 version, their entire different thing we'll see. We have to create if you want to fetch multiple records in 6.3 version, there we have to use a control called dynamic select, but from the 7 version the dynamic select control is deleted and a new concept called data page is included. So now if you want to fetch multiple records in 7 version, we have to use a data page concept. Okay, it is a data page is a rule, and the purpose of the data page rule is to simple load data once and reuse any number of times. Reuse the data in any number of pages or any number of within the same page also we can reuse. Okay, so load data once and reuse the data again and again. So that is the concept of this data page rule, and along with the data page we have to create activity also. Means whenever we configure a data page rule, inside that we have to configure a activity rule, and inside activity we have to configure data page, vice versa. Okay, so whenever we create a data page, we have to configure activity from the data page rule, and inside the activity we will use the data page name. Okay, generally for insert and fetch single record we are using just normal user pages, okay, for debugging purpose, but here fetching multiple records we will not use any user pages or class names. Means in the pages and class names we will not configure anything here. Okay, directly we will use the data page name, and directly we can configure the page name in the method parameters. Okay, no need to use step page names or no need to use pages and classes in this activity when we go with this data page concept. Okay, but in previous versions, means so in the coming sessions I'll show how we will do in 6.3 version. Okay, just I'll tell the steps in 6.3 in order to do the same scenario. In 6.3 generally we have to use a concept called embedded properties. That one also you'll get in coming sessions, and in 7 it is not required because inside the data page we will have something called list and page. Some mode will be there, so directly it is included in the data page only. But in 6.3 version, in order to configure this, we'll have a concept called embedded properties. So how to use these embedded properties and how to create you will get in the coming sessions. And compulsory we need to use repeating layout in 6.3 if you want to fetch multiple records means. Okay, if you want to do dynamic fetch means compulsory we need to use repeating layout only, but in 7 we can also use dynamic layout also here, but in 6.3 version compulsory we need to use repeating layout. And in order to do this fetch multiple records, and we can also call as dynamic fetch also, we can call this concept, we can also call as dynamic fetch. Means dynamically loading the data, means normally in the previous session static data we have entered, but this getting the data from the data class is nothing but a dynamically fetching the data. Means dynamically, so what are the data gets updated in the database, it will automatically fetch from the drop down. Okay, or what are the control we have taken, means whenever the data gets updated in the data table, it will automatically update in the section level also, means in the user interface level it will automatically dynamically update the data, and it will, once it is configured for fetching, so whenever the data gets updated, so the records will get updated in the user interface level also. So that is nothing but dynamic fetch. Static data means it will be permanent, means whatever we give in the property level it is a static data, but dynamic data it may change, so based on the updations or what are the things happening in the database level, any updations in the database it will automatically update the records at the user interface level also. Okay, but in 6.3 version, so we'll use embedded properties concept, repeating layout, and control a, there will be control called dynamic select. Till 6.3 version, from in all the lower versions they will use dynamic select control in order to fetch records from the database. Okay, but from 7 version, so why this one is deleted means in the 7 version, because for the same property if you want to do again, means every time we have to configure this control, means so many steps will be there. So in order to override the issue, so they included a concept called data page. So here in this data page, once if you load, we can reuse the same data. If we have, means if we have a same requirement again, we can reuse the data here. But in the 6.3 version, again if you want to load the same data, again we have to configure the dynamic select and we have to configure activity, so it will be lengthy process. Okay, so in order to override this issue, from 7 version they removed this control and included a concept called data page. Okay, in 6.3 means dynamic select, and from the dynamic select we will configure activity rule, but here from the data page rule we will configure this activity rule. Okay, so like this, so the steps will be different in 6.3 and compared to the latest version. So how to configure in 6.3 also I'll show in coming sessions. Okay, so first of all we'll see 7 version. So already table is there, properties are there. We'll create a section, function, data page rule and activity rule. And here one more thing is, this data page rule we have to configure inside the data class, not inside the work class. Okay, properties, section, function and all will configure inside the work class, but data page and activity, why we have to configure inside the data class means here all the records are inside the data table class. Okay, so what are the records or what are the records we are loading, right? All the records are inside the data class only. So whenever we are fetching multiple records from the database, so data page and activity rule both must be created inside the data classes only. Okay, so first of all, from which data table we are loading the data, so we have to go to the data class, and inside that we have to configure this data page rule. Actually this data page rule comes under data model category. See how to create a rules inside a data class means, the thing is See, every class contains the same configuration, but even though we will not use all of them, even if you open data class or integration classes, so the categories and the rules will be same in all the classes. Any class if you take, so even though you will not use all the things in the data class, so few things will configure based on the requirement. Okay, here in this scenario we are going to create this data page and activity rule inside the data class. Okay. So before that, see how to open the data class and how to create the rules inside the data class. Because if you open application explorer, so by default we can see only work classes we can see. Okay, by default we can only see work classes. Okay, so first of all I want to load data from this. So before that, so fetching multiple records means, so we'll select one property. Under that, what are the records we have, so we are going to load all the records. For example, okay, let's select this data table. See, inside this table, so we have all these properties. For example, if you want to load records for network operator, means what are the records we have under network operator, it will load all the data. Okay, so and this can be done for any property. We can also do for primary key also, or we can do for any property in the table. See, but fetching single record means only based on primary key. Fetching multiple records means you can do it for any property. So if you want to configure for network ID, so add the data page for this property level. And if you want to configure for recharge type, so configure the data page for this. Okay, means, and here in the data class only we are having all the records. So while creating the data page rule and activity rule, inside this data class, that is myapp-key-data-rec-info, inside this class we will configure these two rules, and remaining things, the user interface section, action flow, we will configure inside the Paytm class only, but only the data page and activity we will configure inside this data class. Okay, I will add few records manually. Save this records means, for example, I will do for one property at a time. We can do for list of properties also. That one you will get in next scenario. So right now, for example, for which property you want to configure that property. Okay, now I will do for two properties separately. Network operator and circle I will do it separately. Okay, so in order to configure these properties, first of all, inside the work class only I'm going to create a section. Okay, I'm creating a new section. And not only using the data page, we can also use report definition for loading the data. So that one I will tell you in coming sessions. When I use the report definition, I will tell you that. the section. Okay, so here, so I'm using not only dynamic, you can use any other layout. Okay, I will use a other layout. Already we used so many times this one. So this time I will use a freeform layout. Okay, so let's use freeform layout. So freeform means we can design our own templates, means with any number of rows and any number of columns. So by default it will display 2 rows and 2 columns. If you have any requirement, we can add rows and columns. Okay, any number of rows and any number of columns we can enter. So right now I'm giving only the rows. Okay, first of all I will add one property. So I'm taking, because already recharge step property I'm having static data, so I'm using network operator here. And by default it is text input, right? So I'm going to add a drop down for this. Okay, I'm going to give the control as drop down. Go to settings, go to change option. Okay, so I'm taking the source as drop down. So when we add the source as drop down, we'll have something like list source. So from where you are going to define the data in the drop down. Okay, so by default it will be as defined on property, but we didn't define any static data. As defined on property means any static data is there. So based at property level it will display as defined on property. But if you want, yes, tell me. Okay, I'll give. See, if you want to get the data from the drop down means, so by default as defined on property means it is nothing but a static data. Okay, and if you want to add dynamic data means we have to use data page or report definition. Clipboard we will never use. Clipboard is just a temporary server, just option is there, but we will never use. So maximum we will use a data page, or in very rare cases we will use report definition for loading dynamic data. So now we are using a data page. Okay, once after creating the data page and configuring activity, then I will come back here and I will take the source type as data page. Then I will configure the data page name in the property settings. Okay, just I have given the control as drop down now. Just to close this one. Now next thing is, okay, meanwhile we'll create a function for this. Okay, here dynamic load is not required, you can delete. Save function. next step we'll configure data page rule. Okay, so data page if you want to open means, so first of all we have to open the data class. Okay, data class name is this one. I told you from the application explorer. So if you go to application explorer, so by default it is showing work classes, but if you want to add data classes, we can open the data classes from the class explorer. Okay, this is a class explorer window. Okay, so by default it will show work classes names, but if you want to access data classes also, from the inside application explorer we'll have class explorer. Okay, it will show all the class names. If you want to open your data class name, you can select that one. Okay, here you can see so all the class names. Now you can open your data class name, that is data rec info. click on Click on that class, but every time it is difficult to search and change the class names, right? So we have one option here, that is pinned classes. Okay, if you want to suppose, and under this class if you want to very frequently, if you want to work means, you can add this class name to pinned classes list. Okay, after adding this class you have this pin option here. So if you add the, just click on this pin. Now below the inside application explorer we have a window called pinned classes option. So here what are the classes you are adding, means you are pinning here, so those classes will be added in the pinned classes list. Now you can again select the work class name. Now you can see the work classes and also data classes in the same application explorer. Okay, under the pinned classes, what are the classes you are adding, those class names you can see inside the pinned classes. And by default in the work class, okay, inside this application explorer you can see all the work classes. Okay, now if you want to create anything inside the data class, same how you will define inside the work classes. Similarly, right click on data class. So I told you data page rule comes under data model. Again see, inside data class also you'll get the same categories and same options will be there. Not only data class, any class if you open, okay, the you'll create or not create, that is the last thing, but options will be same under any class. Okay, if it is a class means, so you'll get the same categories and same rules will be there. But even though we will not use all of them, the options and categories will be, and the rules will be same under all the classes, whether it is work class or data class or integration class. So the categories and rules will be same here. So anyway, now we have to configure a data page. So here we have under the, see, even though we will not create a data page under work classes, we will have option, data page option will be there inside work classes also. So like that, few options even though we will not use, all the options will be there in all the classes. So but data page we will never use inside the work classes. So only from the data classes only we will use the data page rule, but option will be there in work classes also. So here inside the data class, go to data model. So click on this data page. Okay, give any label. And these data page names will start with D underscore. Okay, means identifier. By default the prefix will be D underscore, and what are the name you give. Okay, I'm giving some label as load network values list. Okay, just network list I'm giving. So now your data page name comes D underscore load network list. Okay, so by default your rule name will be, okay, while using the rule name in the property level, we will use this total name as data page name as D underscore load network list. Means, so for all the data pages the default prefix will be d underscore, and what is the name you are giving, it will start with that name. Click on open. Okay, so when you open the data page rule, so here we'll get some options. So data page definition first. So data page definition contains some structure. So if you want more information about this, what is structure, and okay, structure contains two types will be there, page and list. Okay, if you want information about the structure of the data page, click on get help option. So you'll get the information about the data page here. So click on definition tab. So here structure is nothing but, so to create a data page containing a single object of the type specified below. So generally, so when we will use the page option means, so within the same page, okay, means for a single property, sometimes when you are loading for single property and within the same page, if you want to use the data page means, we'll use the structure as page option. Okay, suppose for example I'm taking some network operator property. So within the same page or within a single property, if you want to use means, we'll use the data page structure as page. So list means, so if you want to take multiple properties, okay, at a time, if you want to load records for multiple list of properties, then we'll take the structure as list. Okay, and here I'm going to take only one property and within the same page I'm taking. So take the database structure as page only, and below that we have something called object type. Object type is nothing but from which data class we are loading the data, so that is nothing but object type. Next, edit mode is nothing but read only. Okay, maximum, so I only want to load the data, I don't want to, so editable, edit that one. Okay, edit mode will be read only. And scope is nothing but, so here we'll be having three types of scopes will be there: thread level, node level, and requester level. So maximum we'll use thread level only. Whenever a developer create a data page, so coming to the node, so any requester executing on the current node can access that pages. Means for example, so if operator is having access to the, means within this application any operator can access. Suppose if the data page is node level means any operator can access this data page, and thread level means so only the current operator can access. Okay, for example you are creating this data page, only you can access this data page. Other developers in the application or other operators in the application cannot access. Suppose if they request for access, means requester means at node level they will give a request to you, so I want to access this data page in some other form or anywhere. So thread level means only the current operator can access the data page, and node level means any other operator in the application can access this data page. Because so if you select the data page as, sorry, scope as node means, so this data page can access by the other developers also. But if it is a thread level only, so who created that operator, means who created this data page, only he can access this data page in the application. And requester is also similar to node only. So if they give any request in order to access that particular page or anything, they can access the request, means the mode will be requester they'll give. So maximum they will use node or thread only, because from the node only they can also give the access the requester also. Okay, in the previous version they will use requester, either we will use node option or thread option. So right now I'm using the scope as thread only, because and there is no other operators, we don't have multiple operators here, so only single operator is there. So the requester, the scope of this data page will be thread only. Now after giving this information, so we have something called data source. Okay, so within this data page, so we need to load the data with the help of activity rule. Okay, we have some other sources are there, but if you are getting from external data source means, we will use the connect, and the type we will use as SQL or something. But here within the application, from the internal database only we are loading the data. So maximum we'll use load activity as the source option. Okay, so whenever we want to load the data from the database, so from the source we have to give the type as load activity. Okay, and inside activity we have to configure the method and its parameters, and we have to add this activity name inside the data page. So I told you, so whenever we configure a data page, inside that we have to call activity, and inside activity we will call data page, so vice versa. So meanwhile we cannot save until adding this activity name, we cannot save this data page. So keep the data page rule like this. So after creating activity we have to give the name of the activity, then we can save this data page rule. So meanwhile from the data class only we have to create this activity rule. Okay, so open the activity rule from the data class, and coming to the method, so obj browse method we have to use. I told you previous sessions, obj open is for fetching single record, and obj browse is for fetching multiple records. And in the label option give any name. Sorry, okay, I'm giving like network. Okay, so any name you can give. Okay, no need to configure any pages and classes, anything in this scenario, because we are not going to use any. Okay, debugging will be done at data page level, not at user page level. So generally debugging will be done at data page level here. Okay, no need to provide any pages and classes, and directly we will use the method name, and no need to give any step page name also. Obj browse is the method we will use for fetching multiple records anytime, not only in this scenario. If you want to load for at a time, if you want to load for multiple properties also, whenever you want to load records from the database, multiple records, we can use obj browse method. And when you expand this method, so it contains some parameters, so fill the mandatory parameters. So first option is, it is asking for the page name. Okay, so page name here in this scenario we have to configure the data page name. So what is our data page name? So already we have given a name, right? Just copy paste this page name. So this is the page name we have to configure in the activity, that is nothing but data page name. Next, obj class means data class, from which data class we are loading the data. Data rec info is the data page name. Okay, we don't have maximum records here. Maximum records means if we have more than 50, 100 records, if you have means we can give the maximum record count, but we are having only few records, like 6 or 5 or 6 records are there, not required this option. And logic, so if you want to only load any few set of records, only few records if you want to load, we can add a logic. But here first of all I'm going to load all the records. So if you want to, for which property you want to load all the data, so in the field option you'll give the name of the property. So click on dot option. See, if you click on down arrow, so generally it will show the something called parameters and primary, but if you click on down arrow we cannot access the property names. So directly click on dot option, it will show the list of properties. Now, for which property we are going to load the data, select that property name. Okay, and condition, default condition only, we are not setting any condition. And by default right now I'm not giving sorting, so after this I'll show you how to sort the data. So save this activity. So only one method we will use, and once after saving this activity, so call this activity name inside data page rule. Now under the load source, okay, under the source option we have given load activity, and we'll give the name of this activity. Now save this data page. Now this data page we have to configure inside which one, from this user interface section, from the network operator property settings, we have to configure this data page. So first of all you want to check whether the data is loading or not. So go to actions tab within the data page and click on run option. Actually here it will show in XML format, but when you configure this data page in the property settings, there it will display in a drop down. But here just if you want to know whether the data is loading or not, you can check here temporarily. Okay, you can see, so all the records are loading, 6 records are there. So from the data table, so it is loading all the 6 records. Now when you configure this property in the section, within the section go to this settings, field settings, go to field settings. So in the list source option, select the source type as data page. Now in the drop down you can add your data page name, d underscore okay, d underscore load network list is the data page name. Okay, then it will ask you for the property name, that is network operator. Okay, so once if you configure the data page, so click on OK. Save this page, save section. Okay, so just for single property we did. Okay, if you want to do for other property, similar configuration we will do. Wherever in any page, within the page, if you want to load the data only for one property, this process will follow. Now I'll just configure a, just open a flow, new flow I will create. In the connector settings, okay, save this flow. the records in the drop down. Okay, suppose if you want to within the same page, for example, okay, within the same page, if you want to configure multiple, means if you want to load records for another property, means so what we can do means, so open the section. Okay, so below within the same page only, or okay, it may be same layout or different layout, not an issue. It can be same layout or different layout. What I'm doing is I'm adding one more control, that is okay. So this time I will take a different control, that is autocomplete. I will take. Okay, so I'm going to use circle property. And for the circle property, I'm giving the control as input control as autocomplete. Okay, now when you take the control as autocomplete, so you'll get the list source option. Okay, meanwhile click on OK. So within the same data page, okay, there is, okay, now if you want to load the data records for the circle property, okay, no need to once again create a separate data page and separate activity. Okay, within the same data page and from the same activity only we can configure for circle property also. Okay, so there is no need to change anything in the data page now. So already data page is there, right? There is no need to change single thing in data page. So directly go to activity rule, directly go to activity. So only thing you need to do here is just click on add a row, and in the drop down select circle. Okay, now save this activity. So only thing you are doing here is just adding a new row and just select the property name. Okay, now you can directly configure the data page. Which data page you will configure? The same data page you will configure from the circle settings also. Okay, because so already from this data page activity is configured, so already we did add this circle property in the, so in the activity parameters, okay, under the settings here. So directly we can configure the data page from the section here. So open this property, circle property, settings. In the source option we'll give the data page, same data page I'll call here also. Okay, but you'll give the property name as circle here. Okay, here you'll give the property name as circle. Now click on OK. Save this page. Now run this case once. Okay, case is not there, so directly run the flow. Means within the same page for individual properties, if you want to use this, so the structure will be page only, but within the same layout at a time list of properties if you want to configure, means so tomorrow session I'll show you so when to use the structure as a list. Now so here for the circle how the autocomplete will work means if you type anything, so by default it will display all the, so with this letter what are the records you have, it will display all the records. And or just if you click on this pointer, so what are the records you have, it will show all the records. So like this autocomplete will work. So just to click on the pointer, it will display all the records. If you type any letter, so with that any records are there, with this letter any records are there, it will show. So like this, so we can use a control like auto completer drop down, and you can use the data page and load the records. And one more thing here is, here the records it is displaying in what are the order we have in the database, means within this table. From the table what are the order we have, it is displaying in the same order. But if you want to display in ascending order or descending order means, so how to set the sorting means, we have to set sorting at activity level only we have to set. So the record sorting we have to configure at activity level. So within this activity, so within the settings means in the same row of the property we have option called sorting, right? So by default it is no sorting is there. If I select ascending or descending, okay, I'm selecting ascending option for network operator. Save this, but if you save this, it will throw some error messages. Okay, it is saying that cannot sort an unexposed property. A network operator is not an exposed property. Okay, here the thing is, in PEGA we have something called property optimization is there. Okay, we have something called property optimization. So whenever you want to sort the data, or whenever you want to generate a data report, like report generating the report list view summary or report definition rules, so we have to compulsory expose the properties or optimize the properties, means, so in two cases we have to optimize the records from the data class. So whenever you want to generate reports and whenever you want to sort the data, okay, either it is ascending order or descending order, we have to optimize the properties. So how to optimize these properties means, and currently these properties are data class properties, not work class properties, right? So if you go to the data class, means expand the data class, expand data model, expand property. Okay, we are using network operator from this data class. Okay, so how to optimize a property means, right click on property, right click on this network operator property. We have one option called optimize for reporting. So the same option applies for sorting also, not only for reporting, even for sorting also the option will be same. Okay, but by default the label will be optimize for reporting. Just click on this option. Okay, we will not do, some wizard will be there, so just click on next, next and finish. So what are the records are there, it will, all the records it will optimize and display in some sorting order. So click on next option. Click on next. Okay, we have 6 records. Okay, for all the 6 records some background process will run, and while loading the records, right, so all the records it will be displayed in some sorting order. Now click on finish. Once after doing this optimization for this property, so if you try to save this activity now, we can save this activity. Now click on save option. Now this message will go after optimizing the property here. Similarly, suppose if you select for circle also, I'm giving ascending. Once again if you save this activity now, again it will display the same error message that circle is not a exposed property. Okay, similarly we can do for the circle also, optimize for reporting. Click on next. Click on finish. the circle property is done. Now you can save this activity. So if you run the flow now, you can see all the records in sorting order, in ascending order. So previously the records are in order based on the database, in the database table, based on the primary key, what are the order is there, it is showing in that order. But now it will display all the records in sorting order here. Okay, refresh Explorer. Once again run the flow. It is not showing for circle. Okay. Okay. See, data why not required. So did we configure network operator here in the data page? Directly from activity it will take. No need to see, data page is same for both the properties. So within this data page the changes will happen in the activity, right? So for circle property and network operator property, activity is common, so no changes will happen in the data page. Data page is common, and the activity, within the activity, so I'm changing the, means I'm adding more properties here. Okay, no need to, no changes will happen in the data page, so data page is common. Okay, so like this, if you want to add, suppose within the same page, like individual, for individual properties, if you want to load the data, means, so you'll take the database structure as page, and we can configure the activity accordingly. Okay, so like this we can configure activity, and we'll have another scenario. Another scenario contains, so here the, even though these properties are for different properties we are loading at a time, if you want to load for list of properties, means, so when we will use a list of properties, means, so this one at a time, a list of properties if you want to take, we have to use repeating layout. Okay, so then we have to take the database structure as database structure, we have to take list, and the data page we have to configure inside the repeating layout settings, we have to configure data page. Okay, in tomorrow's session I'll tell that option, it will take some time. So there will be another scenario where at a time we can load records for list of properties. So when you want to configure list of properties, then we have to take repeating layout compulsory, so not even dynamic. Inside dynamic we can use repeating then. Okay, that configuration I'll show tomorrow. Inside the dynamic layout we will take a repeating layout, and inside the repeating layout we are going to add the properties, and the data page will create separately, and activity will configure in data page, and inside the layout settings will configure the data page rule. This option, this scenario will do in tomorrow's session. Okay. Then you have to define some static condition and declare expressions we have to use. In the next coming sessions you'll get. So not only this, not only activity and data page, we have to use some other rules like decision rules and declarative rules we have to apply. Then you can achieve that task. So in the coming sessions we will cover that. Okay, so there will be rules like, yes, tell me. Okay. See, only data page. So because while loading the data, records will be in the data class, right? Only data page and activity will define in a data class, and remaining things will define in a work class only. So section, flow actions. So other things will define in the this one, which one? That is in the work class. Suppose if you are working in a Paytm means Paytm, bank means bank. But while loading the records, fetching the data from the data class, so we have to configure every time, not only this time. Anytime if you use a data page means, generally when we will use data page, when you are loading the records from the database, we'll use the data page. So then from the data class, from which data class you want to load the data, inside the data class only we have to create the data page. And also activity also we have to, because inside the data page we are using activity, right? So if you create activity in a separate class, we cannot use, okay, we cannot load that activity. So activity also we have to configure in the same class. And other things we can call this. So there is a connection configuration, because from the obj browse generally we can configure this data page, and from the data page we can configure the activity rule. And within the settings, list settings, so generally data page means related to the data classes only. When you open any section, so from the source we are giving the data page, so data page will be, it will read from the data classes only every time. Okay, data pages, it will read from the data classes only. So when we take the source as data page, so by default you will get the, even though you are calling from the different class, not within the same class, even though you are calling from the work classes, this data page, it will automatically display in the drop down, because it is designed like that. Okay, so data pages will be called from the data classes whenever required. Flaction, I created a flaction already. Flaction is also there because we are calling in a flow diagram, right? So compulsory flaction also I created, but within the same class we'll create sections, flow action and flow, everything will create in a same class. Only thing remember, only when, only in this scenario you will create activity inside a data class, and in remaining all the scenarios we will create activity inside the work classes only. Only when you want to perform dynamic fetch, when you want to perform dynamic fetch for single property or individual properties, you will create activity inside the data class, and remaining all scenarios, any scenario, remaining other scenario you get. Okay, in tomorrow's session also we have to create activity in some different class, that one you will get in tomorrow's session. So apart from work class and data class, there will be something called code-PEGA-list class. This one I will tell you tomorrow. It will be confusion today for you. So not generally, remember one thing, when we have to create activities inside a data class means, whenever you perform dynamic fetch for a single property or at a time individual properties, you will create activities inside the data class, and remaining all the scenarios you will configure inside the work classes only, like insert function, fetch, update. Then not only this, so whenever we are mapping with connectors, mapping with services, okay, whenever you want to add page level business logic, and anytime if you want to configure any flow level business logic if you want to add, so in remaining all the scenarios will configure activities inside the work classes only. So only when you perform this dynamic fetch and whenever you take the database structure as page, whenever you use the database structure as page, then we'll configure inside the data classes. Okay. And where the data class is there means wherever the activity is there. So, and remember one thing, data page always will be created inside the data class only. Data page rule will be always created inside the data classes only. That is one point you have to remember. Yes, yes, tell me. Yes, tell me. Okay, that is just a label. What are the label you are given for the stage? Okay. Okay, you are getting the first page but not moving to the. Okay. Okay, the connections, then the problem will be the connectors. So while you give the connections right in the flow diagram, once delete the connection and give the connection till end, okay, we'll get a green lines. So that is maybe maximum, that will be the problem. So in the flow diagram, if connections are not given, so suppose only till here the first connection is given properly, so then so till flow action page it will display, but the next connection maybe utility or some other thing is not connected properly means. Okay, if you want to share the screen, I will check. Okay, once share the screen, I'll check. Yeah, I have given the presenter setting, presenter access I have given. You can share the screen. Yeah, yeah, you can ask, you can ask. Okay, okay, okay. Column names in personal edition not possible. We cannot add or we cannot update column names. We cannot update any existing column name or we cannot add a new column name. Yeah, limitation in personal edition, just in personal edition. Okay, others any questions? Yes, tell me, Sims. Data page will refresh automatically. So any changes in the data from the database, it will refresh automatically. All the records, what are the any records we have in the database will get automatically, it will refresh and display in the drop down. So only thing is once we'll add the data page and any changes, it will refresh automatically. If you are suppose in the later, if you are adding any new record in the data table, so that new record gets automatically updated in the data page because we have given the class, right? So no need to anything, not only here, any rule once we configure, it will automatically it will update and it will refresh. It will instances some records are adding, right? So all the records it will sort the data, and also it will add in some report. So whenever we generate a data report, right? So some optimization, some orderly, it will organize all the records. It will take from the data class and it will organize all the records. So whenever we perform this sorting and data reports, then it will display in some accordingly. It will generate the reports and also it will generate the data in sorting order. If you don't optimize, then it will not happen. It will again, no need, it will run the job in the backend automatically. Yeah, it will create an index in the backend. Whenever a job comes, a new job is added, it will do its work. Yeah, we can in anything column wise we cannot do any updates. Any updation we cannot perform. Not even data type. We cannot change the class name. We cannot change the column names once after creating the table. Before creating the table only, we have to give the names. Any name change also we cannot do. Okay. Others, any questions? Okay. Okay. So scroll down once. Okay. Are you getting the where is the okay? Okay. Scroll down once. Scroll down the page. I'm able to see, but it stuck in the same thing. Once again, stop sharing and once again share the screen. Okay, presenter access. Already you are the presenter still. Okay, so others, any questions? Okay, fine. I think we lost the connection. Okay, I will log off and I'll join. Okay, so others can leave, guys. Thank you.